Megicula is already showing a superior existence than that of Lilith and Nama. And so it's kind of funny. I went and looked back at some of the fights chapters that was going on with Zagrid. And I remember the part where he and Asta kind of clashed, where he had his trident out and Asta had the Demon Slayer sword out. And there's that moment when he's like, oh, everything that's supposed to come into contact that's magic with my trident gets broken apart, gets broken down. And it showed a level of cunning, and it showed a level of just like actually paying attention to his opponents, analyzing his enemies and the scenario and environment he was in. We didn't really get a whole lot of that from Nama and Lilith. They were not nearly as smart. They were too late to try and be smart, as I've been saying. Once Lilith decided, yeah, I should probably move away from this guy. But Megicula does not seem to be having the same problem. Granted, before anyone says anything, Megicula isn't fighting against Asta. It's a little bit of a different scenario, but Megicula was against Saint Stage Noelle, which is still against a power that they are vulnerable to. Megicula wasn't having any of that like nonsense. He was ready to fight, ready to be smart, ready to kind of be tactical, set things up. Like the chapter obviously opens up immediately after the whole Lolo Petrica getting turned into a devil thing. She's not a devil host. She's outright modified as a devil now, which is cool that Megicula can do that. It's kind of just like an outright better version of what, like the whole idea of the Dark Disciples, I would assume, but just an always superior, like buffing up people with like little shreds of devil power versus like, yeah, this is the big boss Megicula herself, just straight turning people into devils. So that's actually really cool. I do like that as just an outright power she can do. It gives her like a big menacing primary boss existence. Because when you think about it, essentially Megicula can then just continuously make people into devils if she so feels like it. So she could build her own army just based off of that level of a skill, that one technique. So that's really cool, like in of itself. But immediately after that, we have the devil powered up. Lola Petrica used her devil water magic. Was it Hydra of Dark Narrows? Like, this has to be, assuming the description right, it has to be one of my favorite magics in the series so far. Because I like the idea of it is Lola Petrica is creating this evil demonic water, I assume from essentially water from the underworld. And similar to how Zagrid was summoning over those magic-eating leeches, it'd be like she is summoning over demonic creatures, but these specifically are ones that dwell within the water. Like, imagine it's almost more of like she is summoning chunks of like the deep dark waters of the underworld and the creatures that inhabit it. I think it's really cool. This is just a one chapter thing. What's funny is this chapter, I actually, when I saw the spoilers for this panel when she uses her whole like big set of cool hydras, I thought that was a real feat. I thought that was real doing something, because it looks like the worm that Elf Rill made that had like the multiple elemental breaths. I thought it was that, so I was like, oh, well, of course it could be that, but bigger, because Rill should be stronger now. No, that's not what it was. Luckily, Lola Petrica was able to be the one to pull up like an impressive feat like this. And really cool with its magic, really cool with demonstration. I do like this. I think this is, like I said, one of my favorite magics in the whole series as of current. I think just the general way that it can be used is really neat. But after that point, we have Noelle obviously very unhappy about it. We have Gaja very unhappy about it. They want to go and stop Megicula from doing these nefarious activities, taking over Lola Petrica's body, and trying to stop her also from manifesting. Because we did get information on exactly her manifestation and what she's doing here. She explains that when she cursed Aesir, she was able to fully possess Vonica, or at least a partial manifest in Vonica's body, is what she said. So my guess on that, because it's a little weird in how it's worded, when she's saying, oh, it's a partial manifestation to Vonica. It's like, well, didn't Vonica already have devil power beforehand? I'm wondering if the way that devils work just based off of like this chapter and what this kind of like really should mean in translation and transition to other devils. Because when you think about it, if there is a way, there's a set kind of almost method that you have to get to a set stage in possession. Because she says it's after cursing Aesir to death that she was able to get to the whatever stage was after the version of Vonica that we saw fight Aesir. So, does that mean that for other devils, they also have to have some form of trade-off? Like, did Lucifaro have to, like when Lucifaro first paired to Dante, was it like Dante has that first barely just kind of whatever 50-something% form, or it's just like the black power is like coming over his body? And then it's like, hey, you have to do X, Y, and Z and able to get to, if you want to be able to get to certain further stages of this form, of this possession. Because it also makes sense of why the devils wouldn't say anything to their hosts about this, because they're going to be orchestrating like a plan against them like the whole time. Like this, as far as we know, like just based off of how Megicula is demonstrating her value of Vonica, and how we've already had Nama and Lilith say that Dante was Lucifaro's toy, so clearly they don't have like a high regard opinion of their hosts. It seems more of like they're just pieces to get them manifested, to get them through the portal. Maybe even like backups in case the gate doesn't fully open. Like they're just similar to what we have with Megicula, if this is a way that other devils could try and figure out a way to cheat their way through. Let's look at Zagrid as well. Zagrid as well had a way to figure out how to get past the gate without it just opening. And it seems the same way with Megicula. So there's definite ways that they are aware of that are the scheming methods on how to slip right past the gate. And the methods of that are definitely like it's the fact that there are certain ways to cheat past the gate just makes me assume that the gate had to be artificial. I don't think it was just like when time first created, the devils were down there. I don't think so. I think the devils had to get locked down there at least at some point. Maybe like there used to not be a gate and they used to be able to come back and forth whenever they wanted. But there's definitely clearly an artificial kind of implementation of I think of that barrier, that borderline between the normal world and the underworld, that the devils have ways of just trying to get past the rules and cheat methods to kind of, again, just like slide past it. But Gaja didn't have a good time this chapter, as well as Noelle. Noelle had a pretty bad time. I think everybody's in a really bad state at the end of the chapter. Like, Noelle goes for her larger Sea Dragon sword, it's just a bigger, more powerful than the one that we've already seen. And Decaying World just, kind of like, Decaying World kind of looks like it just goes into it and then almost just kind of like nullifies it. I don't really know how to describe entirely how exactly Decaying World would work one for one without an outright description. But maybe it just like weakens it until it falls apart, or it's kind of like at a structural level, like, oh yeah, it breaks the fundamentals of the spell and just has it kind of like dispel or break down. It's again, it's one of those weird hacks abilities that like I really wish we would get like a outright, just like a word bubble, a good like 2 to 3 sentences explaining exactly what it does that it affects stuff. Is it just cursing and making it weaker? Because that's fine. Like, that's very easy to understand, but I would like to know what it is it does entirely. Because Decaying World is like, that's like Megicula's go-to. Like, characters tend to have their own go-to attack. Like, whatever it is in their arsenal is like their primary, this is my fallback one, or like just general the one that I'm always going to like lean towards when I'm not 100% sure what to use in a situation. Like, I'm sure after I said that, a lot of people just thought of like different characters and like the attacks they use the most. It's just easy to, it's really easy to look at characters that get a lot of screen time and look at whichever one that they use primarily. But Charlotte's trying to do stuff in this chapter. Rill's trying to do stuff. Rill, I appreciate the effort. I wish that you just did something more than this. Like Charlotte's level of dampening curses is useful across the board. Always going to be useful in a fight against someone like Megicula. Anybody who's primarily using curse-based abilities, Charlotte just being there is useful. I really wish Rill went the way that I mentioned in I don't remember the last time I talked about it, but I primarily talked about it when Charlotte first used her upgraded Briars, because Rill should be like a combat support, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Rill when he made the very muddy terrain that made Charlotte's power better, like Charlotte's spell better, that is useful, like super useful. If you look at that, Rill would be somebody that could enhance anybody that he goes into combat with. He can still do stuff on his own, but like imagine somebody like Yami, or somebody like Jack, or Fuego, Merleona. We already saw it with Charlotte, but really just think any big character. Rill would be like an automatic plus to them to make them more powerful. And it's just like, oh, his value is making other people more powerful. His value is in what he brings to the table. Because look at someone like Finral or someone like Mimosa. They aren't fighters themselves. They are support people. And just because someone is a support character doesn't make them any lesser of a character. Like Finral is definitely one of my favorites in the whole series, and he has like no real fighting capability whatsoever. The only way that he could fight somebody is by doing some like scenario-based thing, like he teleports them like way high up in the sky or in the middle of an active volcano, or does something like that, where it's more of like what he kind of strategizes with his teleportation rather than like the spells themselves. So Rill, I really wish that Tabata could do that for Rill, because say if you put Rill with Gacha and Rill's over here just doing whatever spells he needs to do. Like, man, imagine him and Gacha are fighting a guy, and then while he's fighting Gacha, Rill sets up like some almost like a lightning rod area that concentrated lightning all into one area, so Gacha could do like some giant spell, and it all like gets concentrated into one point, and then like hits his opponent or something. Like Rill could be a legitimately top tier support wizard, and he doesn't have to be like support. That's why I said combat support, because he like when Mimosa has her sunflower, but like for the most part she's a healing support. Rill could be a combat support because he also to a degree can fight for himself, can defend himself against people. But if he could just focus on like pretty much buffing other people the best he possibly could, like his value would go so much higher up for me personally. Like, and I know some people would probably look at that and be like, oh, you know, this support wall was just like, well, who cares? Support people are important, especially like a valuable support. You put a valuable support in a scenario, can completely change the scenario. Look at Finral. Look at Mimosa. Look at how the Vetto fight would have been if you took Finral out of there. Now look at it. Just literally look at any other like big fight. Put Finral in there, and I bet like capable Finral, not like Dante fight Finral, or like Finral was like trying not to get killed. But really, you put him in a scenario where he's able to do what he can, and in order to do everything he can to help, he's gonna do a lot of good things, and that's the same thing with Rill. And then, because like his building in this chapter, it didn't do anything. It did absolutely nothing. He made this building Twilight Valhalla. It had like these little cherub knights kind of flying around it, and then it immediately got destroyed by Megicula. It immediately got taken out. Imagine if instead he did more of that terrain and helped buff up Charlotte's roses in order to make them stronger so they could do better against the curses. Or if he did something like made a bunch of water to help buff up Noelle, done a bunch of stuff to enhance those around him. Maybe literally put a damn blindfold on Gacha so he doesn't hesitate on Lola Petrica. There's a lot of stuff he could have done. And I don't give Gacha like a hard time over this. Like this is one of those character-driven things that it only doesn't make sense if you have absolutely zero understanding of the character. You have to take character personality and stuff into account, and this is one of those times, unfortunately for Gacha, that ended up putting him in a really bad spot. And then at the end of the chapter, you have Spirit Dive Noelle come undone, and now they're in a bad spot. It's going to probably depend on other people showing up to help, you know, Dorothy, Nozelle, and whatnot. I would say when it comes to Noelle breaking out of the form, I don't put it on like negatively towards Noelle. Like she's had her Spirit Dive at the very least, but the difference is between her and Yuno, I would say, is my guess as to why they both why Yuno doesn't seem to have a time limit, but Noelle does. I was gonna say gauging and guessing, but I kept switching back and forth between it. But just guessing on that is one thing we know about Yuno from the fight against Zagrid is, his level of, the whole beloved by mana thing and whatnot. Like, his connection to mana is obviously much higher than Noelle's. Noelle has more mana, but just has a better connection to it. But during the part where he forms Spirit of Zephyr for the first time, he's like absorbing mana from the environment. He's absorbing kind of like the excess mana from certain spells. He's pretty much just drawing in the power around him at a faster rate so he can just regenerate more mana faster. I think Noelle's wasn't her running out of mana, because when you look at Noelle in the panel, she doesn't look tired. She doesn't really look exhausted when she comes undone. There's a part where it's just like the general sweat, but that looks more of like sweat like, oh shit, like we're in a big scenario right now. Because when she's sweating in the one panel before it comes undone, that looks like more of, yeah, we're in some hostile territories kind of sweating. And then once the form comes undone, she looks fine. It's only when she's like, oh no, like the form came undone that she's sweating again. But again, I think that's more of like, when you think about like a really hectic situation or scenario that just, makes your body perspirate and kind of sweat up. I don't think it was, oh, she's out of mana, because Undine looked pretty fine as well. My guess is that because she's newer to the form, as well as her form, because of how much mana she has, it would be like think of it kind of like juggling. Here's the easy way to say it. Think of it like juggling. Is juggling maybe not regular size balls or something like that, but maybe saying is he's got to pick up a pace. Think about it like that. Starts out with 3 balls, he juggles 4, someone throws him 5, he eventually picks up the pace, and he's continuously becoming just like a machine of keeping these balls juggled. Whereas like Noelle, imagine Noelle, you give her like 3 basketballs and then you throw one at her, and it's just like she can try and get it, but it's just so much more of a difficult task based off of like the power output. Because it seemed like Noelle with her Saint stage was more powerful than just based off of like how well she did against 100% Vonica versus how well was doing against 100% Xenon. Could still win, but that doesn't change the fact that was clearly like getting pressed like once the 100% forms came out. And it was becoming a little bit of a challenge for him. Maybe not like 1-for-1, like he's got to put everything in this. I think Xenon will still reveal something, who knows. Or, will unlock Saint Stage fully and then go and attack him. Either way, I think it's just based off of the mechanics of their forms. Because when you think about Belle and Lolopechka, just based off of what they've demonstrated, as well as and Noelle, and Belle are like they're more attuned with the mana around them. They are more high speed recovery. They're way more set in regen and just building mana back up. Whereas Noelle's and Undine are both has massive mana pools. Massive. Just think of it literally like a video game character. One guy has a giant. He's got 1,000 health, but he's got 10,000 mana. Versus a guy who's got 2,000 health and 2,000 mana, but maybe like the 2,000 health or the 2,000 mana guy regenerates 5 times more mana per second back than the larger mana pool guy. It's just kind of one of those things, I would guess, but it's going to be until the next chapter. We're probably going to get some information on it, just based off of it literally broke apart, so I think we're going to have to get some reasoning in the next chapter from Noelle or Undine about what happened. Anyway, other than that though, comment below. Thumbs up the video, but for the like button, subscribe button, check out my other videos. But on that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.